One of the things that I had to learn was how to be my own best advocate, how to stand up for myself. When doctors were dismissing me and saying like it's nothing, that being able to kind of like push back, which is scary because they're obviously an authority figure that you're not supposed to like question necessarily, but you also know your own body better than anyone.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Allie Chandler. And we're going to be talking about how she discovered she had Lyme disease and the steps she took to heal herself, not only from Lyme disease, but mold toxicity, parasites, and some heart issues. One of the things she had to overcome were many doctors that told her everything looked good in terms of her labs. It took her quite a while to figure out that she actually had Lyme disease, which is not an uncommon thing for people that have contracted it. And then the path back to healing herself and how she did that, and how during that path to healing, she intersected with a doctor and began to do marketing for his supplement company, which led her to create her own company called Upsell Health, where she helps functional medicine practitioners and wellness brands through marketing that feels as natural as the healing they provide. Allie is a remarkable example of resilience, mindfulness, and a mental attitude that took her from being bedridden to thriving today, health-wise and business-wise. So let's jump in. This is Allie Chandler. Good morning, Allie. I'm so glad you made it to The Exploding Human today. I'm happy to meet you.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're in Michigan, huh? And I'm in Los Angeles. You're cold and I'm warm.
Exactly. I'm about to be in Florida for 3 weeks though, so I'm super excited about that.
We'll enjoy that because
Yeah.
it's nice to be out of the cold. So, but
Yep,
yeah.
definitely.
So I was looking at your bio, a little bit of your bio, and you sort of got started on this path to healing, and then, of course, which led to marketing, and we'll talk about that too. Through and you were 26, is what I read, and you got Lyme disease and
Yeah.
mold and a few other
So
things.
many.
What? How did that? Do you even know how that happened?
So, yes, my background was in teaching, and I had at the time decided I didn't really love it and I wanted to quit my job and go backpack in Europe. So that's what I did. And I went with a couple of girlfriends. And prior to flying over there, I was super healthy, never really had health issues. I did like boxing, like true boxing, strength and conditioning, ate really healthy. And basically, on this trip to Europe, overnight I got incredibly sick and I had no clue. I was like, oh, it's probably just a virus or, something. But what happened was on the trip, I kept fainting and I was having neurological issues and cardiac things were going on and just it kind of was switching symptoms every few hours. So yes, I believe what happened was I was in Switzerland. We were tent camping, and I remember getting like a bunch of bug bites at the time, but I didn't have a bullseye rash and I didn't like pull a tick off of me. But the only thing that I can figure out is that's when it happened because, a day or two later is when my health just totally crashed. And there's a whole long story. We don't have to get into the whole thing, but it took me probably 3 to 4 years to figure out that anyone was even going to test me for Lyme. Nobody even thought to test me. So I dealt with that for quite a few years of just bouncing from doctor to doctor and ERs all the time. I actually got a social worker assigned to me because I was constantly in the hospital. And they were like, is this girl okay? Like, let's make sure she gets help. Yeah, so it took me a few years to figure out what was going on. And it was a very frustrating process of just like, trying to investigate yourself too and figure out who can help you.
Yeah, I've heard that about Lyme disease, that a lot of doctors don't even think about it because it's not super common, but it is something that's very real.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
sort of the simplest, in a way, it's sort of the simplest thing to go to first in one sense if you have these multiple symptoms. But
Yep.
doctors don't seem to be, I don't know if they're taught about that much at all in medical school.
No, they're not really. And conventionally, the treatment is like a course of doxycycline, which is just an antibiotic. And for a lot of people, if they've had it for a while, that's not going to do it. So, yeah, there's not a ton of education on it in kind of the traditional medical sense. So, I did have to kind of dive into the functional world and find someone who was a specialist with like pathogens and sort of like this infectious disease type, symptoms. So, yeah, I don't blame them at all either. It's just they don't have that sort of education built in.
I had a doctor on this show a year or so ago, and maybe they teach this in medical school, maybe they don't. When doctors sort of come up with a diagnosis, he says, well, I come up with a diagnosis, but then I always ask, but what else could it be? Which is an
Yeah,
important question to ask, I think, about anything really. Is just am I so sure that
this is
this is the
it.
reason? And
Mhm.
so that's always a good question.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people that I went and saw, they had their specialty. So
Yeah.
I did run into a lot of times like, oh, it's just your gut health. Like, let's do a whole rebuild of your mucosal layer. And they were sure that was, this is it. This is going to help. Or, I'd see a hormone specialist and they'd say like, oh, we just need to balance your hormones. And I knew it wasn't anything that simple just because of how awful I feel, felt at the time. I feel a lot better now, but I knew it wasn't something that easy. So
Well, especially if you go from vibrant health to suddenly and very suddenly.
overnight,
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean that's not, can't be gut health. Doesn't make any sense that all of a sudden your gut's messed up in one
right?
day.
In
That
one
seems,
day, yeah.
yeah, it seems illogical. But then again, I didn't go to medical school, so
Well, I think the problem too is that there's not enough time for practitioners to really like hear your health history. A lot of it is like triaging and it's, let's run some tests and make sure you're not going to like die today. That was what I ran into a lot where it was like, okay, let's run like a CBC or run a couple things and make sure that you don't have anything like a huge outlier. But I think that's the great thing about sort of the functional space is you'll do like a 90-minute to 2 hour intake with a doctor like that and they'll actually sit and listen and you're like, no, listen to me, like this all happened in one day, like what could it be? So you would think like traveling overseas you'd go to some kind of like weird virus or infection or something.
the mold piece of it, do you think that was related to the Lyme disease? It made you vulnerable to something?
That happened years later. So I moved to California after this trip and kind of like was seeing a bunch of doctors out in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And within all of this, got married. And that's what you were reading about me being 26 is when I became bedbound because nobody had figured it out yet. And so I'm here, newly married, can't get out of bed, can't cook, can't clean, really can't do anything of value. And then my ex-husband was a PGA golf pro. So we kind of bounced around depending on what he was doing, or he would get like a head pro job somewhere else. And so we had been living in Clovis, California for a golf thing,
Mm-hmm.
moved back to Monterey, moved into a brand new, new to us, an old apartment on the ocean.
Okay.
And I just got so sick when we moved there. And this was like maybe 8 years into my Lyme journey. So I do think that, because of Lyme being so detrimental to the immune system and it's really
Yeah.
difficult for your body to like keep up and I do think that that probably made it a little bit worse for me. So he had some symptoms too, and very different symptoms when we were living in mold. And my mom actually had to fly out to help take care of me because I was like not able to eat. I actually lost like 38 pounds in 6 weeks because I
Oh.
just couldn't swallow anymore. And, all these like functions of my body that are just normal to most people, I couldn't do anymore. So My mom came out and she actually was sick for about a year after living in it. And we found out later that it was black mold. Obviously, it's the worst kind. So yeah, we did a whole bunch of tests there, and that was, another big thing. And I learned a lot about like what mold can do to the body, but typically people who have Lyme, it's not the only thing that they have. There's usually like other, co-infections, or there's other things that maybe they have heavy metals or parasites, or they might have gut dysfunction or something like that. But usually there's some sort of compound root causes that are going on with Lyme and with mold too, if you're really like hit hard.
I've done a couple episodes on mold also. It's a really, when it happens, it's not good. And that's another one that takes people a while to figure out that that's what the issue is. You hear it a lot in sort of tropical kind of climates. You hear it more like Florida. I know you're going there, but you're not going to get it. But with air conditioning vents and humidity and leaking air conditioners and walls getting wet, and it's like a ripe environment for that stuff to grow.
Yeah, it's true. And it's hard because it can hide. Like we didn't see any visible mold at all, but eventually we had someone come into the apartment and test it. And, it came back positive for the Stachybotrys and some other types of mold. But what ours was we were actually an end unit on the apartment, and there was a locked storage closet right sharing a wall with us, and it was always locked. So there was one day my husband at the time went back to get a couple things from our apartment, and the door was open. And so he went inside and he took pictures of it, and the whole ceiling was destroyed. It was just soaking wet. There was like active water coming in, and it just looked like it had had this like roof leak for a very, very long time. So this storage closet that was sharing our wall and sharing a vent, obviously, like we couldn't see anything, but that's going to be in the air, and it's going to, be what we're breathing in. So yeah, it's scary, and it can even be like in your car or like at your workplace, and it is hard to kind of pinpoint mold. But yeah, usually if you go travel somewhere and you feel way better, and then you come home and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I feel fatigued and nauseous," and you have all your symptoms come back, that's a great indicator that maybe you should look into mold in your house or where you work.
Yeah, I think there is some online mold testing kits you can get, and I don't know how good they are compared to, hiring somebody to come over, but it's a good start for sure.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, you can do dust. You can collect dust, but we looked up like mold remediators in our area, and we just had them come in because they actually were able to treat the apartment too. And we moved out of there just because I was like, I don't really want to deal with this, but they can do like ozone and do all kinds of like things to kind of clean it up if you're planning on staying there.
Were there other people in the apartments affected too, or it was just you guys?
We didn't really talk to anyone there, but we didn't really I was so sick. Like when we were living there, my husband carried me to the car. Like I couldn't even walk to our parking lot. So we didn't really like get out much or talk to anyone, but I was curious. Yeah, there were a few people that we had a little puppy at the time, and he actually got a bunch of health issues, and we both had to get throat surgery, my dog and me, which was crazy. So yeah, we had talked to some people and just like having to let the dog out here and there. And people, I think, were just thinking, oh, it's just like a cold or a virus or, something like that. But I don't have any definitive proof of anything happening to anyone, but I would assume that, they would probably be having issues as well.
Well, I think that's one of the important things about doing these kinds of shows, that you give people the information that maybe what they're being told or what they think are the possibilities, there may be something else. Now we'll go into some treatments that you did and protocols and modalities, all those wonderful words.
Yeah.
What can I do? What can I do? And then I want to get into some of the brain stuff that you were talking about in your bio. So
amazing. Yeah. So once I ended up finding out that it was Lyme, there's a couple of tests that were really helpful because it's also conventional testing for Lyme is a little bit tricky, the Western blot. So there was a Vibrant Labs tick-borne panel that you can do at home. That's like a blood prick, and they'll test your blood. And then the other one that I did was DNA connections. and they actually will look for the DNA of the pathogens in your urine. So I did both, and both of them confirmed Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, like all these co-infections. And so I found a Lyme literate doctor who actually is in San Diego. And he was reading my labs and he was like, this is the most co-infections I've seen. Like, no wonder you feel awful. Like, you have Lyme, but you have these other things that came up. And of course, that test isn't going to test everything. He had a whole protocol that he did with Lyme clients, and we started by sort of supporting like the just the organs and the body systems. We didn't like jump right into detox because at the time I was so sensitive to everything. Like, everything overwhelmed my body, whether it was a noise or lights or smells. It just, my body, my nervous system was just like, no, like we need to be in a dark room and just can't do anything. So we did a lot of like, he called it drainage support. I'm sure you probably have heard people talk about that, but it's just supporting like your liver and your kidneys and your colon and your lymphatic system, and just sort of like the basics of what makes your body work. So we did that for a couple of months, and even some of that gentle stuff, I was like, I can't do
Wow.
this. I'm reacting to everything. So then we actually moved into parasite cleansing, which was fascinating because I was like, I don't have parasites. That's crazy. Like, there's no way. So we did some basic parasite cleanses, and again felt really, it really made me feel super fatigued and like kind of, I always said detoxy. That's not like a really clinical word, but we call it Herxheimer reactions. So it's like you get this paradoxical sort of like detox reaction because your body can't keep up with all the toxins kind of like trying to flush out. So we did that. We did some heavy metals work. We did some like gut support as well. And then we jumped into Lyme, was like the last thing that we tackled because we were trying to take the little like toxic pieces out. So I don't know if you've heard of this before, but we call it like a total toxic burden. So every person has like a bucket inside their body, and you're filling it with like chemicals and glyphosate in your food and whatever toxins you're being exposed to, in everyday life. And at some point, the bucket gets full and it overflows, and that's when you start to have symptoms sometimes. So what he was trying to do was pull like one little thing out of the bucket at a time so that my body had more capacity to deal with whatever was left. So that's kind of like the approach that he took, rather than if you jump into just treating the Lyme, it's actually a very intense thing to try to detox from. So he was like, if we would have done that, you would have totally crashed. It would have been a horrible experience. So we kind of started like gentle, like let's peel the layers of the onion back a little bit, one by one, try to take away some of these other things that your body could be dealing with. So then when we got to the Lyme, I think it was like 10 months in, I felt like my body could handle it. So it was a very interesting. There was a lot of weird things I had to do. Like, we had to buy an infrared sauna, a wooden one that like sat in our tiny little 400 square foot apartment in California, which was the size of a two-stall garage. And yeah, we just like heating pads and coffee enemas and all of these sort of like detox tools that had no idea before I was dealing with all of this, had no idea these existed. So it was a very, I would say, a pretty long and intense protocol, but I mean, in the end, I'm feeling amazing now. So that's the bonus of having, to go through a year and a half of some pretty like regimented protocols.
Yeah, it's amazing how the desperation will get us to try things that, one, we've never heard of, and two, that when we do hear them, we go, what?
You're like, no, I'm not doing
People
that.
do that?
Yeah. The coffee enemas was fascinating to me because it's pretty controversial, but there's the Gershom like kind of cancer treatment, alternative treatments. They do a lot of coffee enemas. So it's this very, very alternative method. But yeah, you'll try anything because you're just like, okay, like I've seen probably 15 doctors at this point and nothing's worked. So I'm game. Let's go.
Then there's always the question, regular or decaf?
Exactly. What about a latte?
Yeah. I'll just drink some cream now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sort of one of those people, like I'll try things that
Mhm.
most people think is strange. But
Right.
if I do enough research on it and say, oh, this may actually be something good, I'll try it. That's, I've been a test tube for a long time.
I love that.
Yeah, I try to just not have an opinion about something until I've.
So you do it. What are some of the weird things that you have done? Do you have any examples?
Well, I've done coffee enemas. I've done that.
Okay.
I've
So
done
you know.
yeah, I've done colonics. I've done Reichian therapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I've done that. That's on the sort of emotional side. Supplements and detoxes and all
Right.
kinds of I mean, I've tried a bunch of stuff over the years, not even being sick, just being curious.
Right. I love that.
And to see if it would make me feel more vibrant, better, stronger, am I going to get, because I'm always looking for some things that are going to make me, thrive rather than just exist.
Do you do any like an aura ring or anything that's kind of like giving you feedback on how your body is doing or no?
I have not done that. No.
Okay. That'd be interesting. If you're experimenting, you can kind of check out like your HRV and all, all the metrics of the aura ring.
Yeah, I
Is
know a lot of people do it.
yeah.
They have them, and I guess maybe the name turns me off.
Okay. It's
A
fine.
little, just see, I'm judgmental on some things already.
Yeah.
If it sort of smacks of being too woo woo, I kind of go, I don't know. But
Yeah.
I meditate, I do yoga.
Uh-huh.
I try. I listen to a lot of binaural beats when I
Oh yeah.
meditate.
I love
So
that.
I try a lot of different stuff, but the
Mhm.
aura ring hasn't been on
Too much for
or
you.
the grounding things. I haven't done
The
that.
mat.
I'd
Yeah.
rather walk around barefoot. I don't
Yeah.
mind. Do
Just
that
go
outside.
outside. You live in California. You can do that anytime.
Yeah, exactly.
Fine.
Exactly. So you started to feel better,
Mhm.
and then so so this is what sort of put you into the we'll just call it functional medicine world, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
That doctors that are trained in just not just medical school protocol, but these other, I don't even like the word alternative. Let's say holistic things
Right.
that you can do. What else did you discover as you were doing this? Because this is what I was going to ask you when you were talking about going to these doctors, because I think it'll tie into the next part. Did anyone, when they couldn't figure it out, did they look at you and say, there's something wrong with you or something off with you mentally? Like a little victim blaming,
Yeah.
like, oh, this woman is, there's no tests that are saying anything is happening, and
Yeah.
she's really sick, so she must be disturbed emotionally in some way. Did that
Yeah.
ever happen? Because it must have.
Um, I mean, not super directly, but yeah, I'm sure. I always
Okay.
had something in my labs. Like my labs weren't perfect by any means,
Yeah, but
but they didn't match how sick I was, I wouldn't say, right? Like so I'm and I guess the thing with the doctors that I saw is they saw me come in and then like I'd have lost, 20, 30 pounds the next time I came. So there were things where they were kind of like, that's not necessarily normal. I had a lot of cardiac issues that were electrical in nature. So at first, when I went to the ER, they were like, you just have anxiety.
yeah.
But I'm coming in with 220 beats a minute, which I feel like you can't be that anxious where you can make your heart go that fast. Like that's pretty extreme. And so I ended up going through a whole bunch of cardiology tests and they figured out that it was an electrical issue. So that was kind of a nice thing because it's like I did get dismissed a lot in the hospital setting, I would say, of just like, you're just anxious. And I'm like, I'm absolutely not. Like, I feel fine. My body is not responding how it should be. And I did get told that a lot about anxiety. And they did try to put me on anti-anxiety medication, but I never wanted to because I knew
Oh,
that wasn't it. I was like, there's something actually wrong. But I think once I switched out of that sort of conventional setting, then everybody was like, I see so many people like you, like you're seen, you're heard, you're understood here. We'll get to the bottom of it. And that was really validating because I think a lot of people have the same thing where they try their PCP, and then they try specialists and they try that first. But the functional world is nice because I feel like they get the people that haven't figured it out and they're still looking and they're still advocating for themselves, and they're not just like, well, I guess this is just how my life is going to be. I would never be that person, but I could have gone on disability, and I could have, probably not worked for quite a while, but I'm so stubborn, and I'm very like type A hard worker perfectionist, that I was like, I'm gonna fix this. Like, we're gonna solve this. We're gonna figure it out. And so I think like one of the things that I had to learn was how to be my own best advocate, how to stand up for myself, when doctors were dismissing me and saying like it's nothing, that being able to kind of like push back, which is scary because they're obviously an authority figure that you're not supposed to like question necessarily, but you also know your own body better than anyone. No one else can feel how you feel.
Exactly.
Finding your voice in that way and this whole process was a big thing. And that's something interesting when you were talking about Reiki and they do the chakras, at least when I've gone to someone. Every single person I saw was like, your throat chakra is blocked. Like, you probably need to like find your voice and say something. And they would always try to clear it. And I feel like that was definitely something I learned in the process of being okay, like speaking up for myself. Cause I was definitely a people pleaser and definitely like more on the quiet, quiet side before that. And now I'm just like, I'll say anything. So that,
Good. That's,
yeah.
and sometimes, people who are trained professionals in whatever they do, they don't like pushback. They
Mhm.
don't like it. And they get mad at you. You're telling me this, but I still feel like shit.
Yeah.
So who's right here? Any apologies from anybody who was rigid?
No, no, never.
Not one
I didn't
apology,
go
right?
back to
Okay.
anyone either. It's not like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Like, why would you?
yeah, I didn't. But I mean, the hard part too is I almost felt like with friends and family, like after going to so many doctors, if they were like, is something actually wrong with her? Is because nobody's finding anything. So you get into this position where you're just like, no one understands me. You feel so isolated and you feel so alone, and you kind of feel like you have to prove how sick you are to people. Like, I don't want to be sick, I wanted to be like a
Right.
healthy,
Hmm.
contributing member of society, but you almost wonder if that, with friends and family, having the validation was really helpful for me too. But I think I had told you this before, but in the whole mold situation, that actually is what ended my marriage because there was so much. I was so sick at the time. I was always in the hospital, and we ended up getting a divorce because of it. So at my sickest point, I also lost my husband, and I had to move back to Michigan and kind of like have, my family help me out a little bit. So it does impact, every aspect of your
Sure.
life when you're sick. Your relationships, your social life, your work, your everything is impacted.
Oh yeah, physical discomfort, and that's obviously a light way of putting it. Illness, those kinds of things, it gets over all over everything. You can't
Yeah.
avoid it not affecting every single aspect of your
Exactly.
life, and the fact that other people might not understand. I mean, you can't fully understand somebody else that way, but there's a frustration on loved ones not being able to help, so they have to come up with a reason
Mhm.
or a way of looking at it, so because they're so frustrated also.
Right. They feel
And then
helpless. Yeah.
right, and then there's the other part of it, which is there's a fear on the part of the person who's sick, is like, is this thing I'm going to try now, these supplements, these foods, this lifestyle change, is going to make it worse?
Right.
Am I making a mistake?
Mhm.
Is this ever going to get better? There's a lot of mental stuff that goes on particularly when you don't feel well. I'm the worst when I'm sick. Even if I have a cold, I turn into, a
Yeah.
baby. I think they always say men are like that,
I was
but
thinking that I wasn't going to say it though.
well, you could say it because that's
Yeah.
true, at least for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think some of that has to do with, that women are very physically strong in terms of stamina, baby making, all these
Mhm.
things that women are designed to do in life, that men are, we lift heavy shit and we punch each other and stuff like that, but that's that's a different kind of strength.
Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think one thing that I found comfort in at first in my healing journey was I got on Facebook groups of people that also had Lyme because I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone else who
Yeah.
had it. So I started looking for communities of people who were healing and figuring out what they're doing and being able to sort of compare protocols and, hear their stories. But I did in the middle of my journey end up having to leave all of them because I do think at some point it is helpful for information, but then you're also inundated with like the sickest people constantly, posting about how sick they are and how awful it is and they've been sick for 20 years. And I didn't want to internalize all of that because it was really depressing to see all these people. And I'm like, I don't want that to be me when I'm 40, 50. Like, I don't still want to have to deal with this. So I ended up leaving them, and I do think they served a great purpose. And I did learn a ton of information that did help me get better, what supplements to take. I think I found my doctor from a group like that. But what I was doing at the time, along with that, is I was tracking all my symptoms. It was like every time I had something different, I opened my phone app, wrote the time, tried to intellectualize it and say, like, what did I do wrong? What did I eat? Was it because I walked this morning and I crashed myself? Like, I would constantly try to figure out why I was having these symptoms. So, my biggest shift and sort of like, I guess, transitioning into some of the mindset stuff is I left the groups, I stopped tracking symptoms. And what I started doing was I'm going to write down 3 wins every day, even though my days feel like there's nothing positive happening. I'm going to make myself write down 3 positive things. And that was huge, huge for me. And I hated it at first because at first I was like, I have nothing to be grateful for. Like, I have, my friends are all on vacations and getting married and having kids. And I'm literally in bed all day because my heart rate goes to like 170 every time I walk. And, for 2 years, it was like that. And so every day I was like, okay, my friend texted me today. That's amazing. Like, let me write that down. It would be the simplest stuff. Or like, oh,
Hmm.
it's like, 75 and sunny today. And I opened my window. It would be like the tiniest, tiniest thing. But as I sort of progressed through the healing, then I could look back on these things. And eventually my gratitudes were like, I went on a little, mini trip with one of my friends. I mean, this was many months later, but you can see the progress and I can appreciate, the poor person I was at the beginning when I was trying so hard just to like grasp at the tiniest straw of like happiness. And then I truly do believe that what you focus on is what grows. And so the fact that I was focusing on gratitude, that's what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for symptoms. I wasn't looking for how do I stay stuck in this illness and how do I like validate how sick I am. I started looking for ways out of it. And I really think that all of the mindset stuff helped me. I mean, I think the protocols are important in finding the right support, but the mindset stuff to me was when I made the biggest shifts.
Mind is very powerful.
Hmm. Yeah.
And just those simple things can really start to turn you in a different direction
Yep.
because it's really easy to feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, it is.
Really easy to do that, especially when you have good reasons.
Hmm.
There's a certain amount of comfort and pleasure in feeling sorry for yourself when you're in that.
Yeah,
It's like a warm
it's
blanket.
true.
Yeah.
It's true, and I talk a lot about being stuck in this like victim loop. And I think a lot of people get into that where it's like this is happening to me and it stinks. Like this is not fair. I feel horrible, and you get stuck in this loop of like blame and you're trying to rationalize it and then you're just like resisting and then you're hiding. Like there's a whole victim loop where there's no accountability in it. And so the flip of that obviously is the accountability loop where you're like owning everything and you're active and you're recognizing it and you're taking action rather than just letting everything
Hmm.
happen to you. And
Yeah.
one of my mentors at the time, one of the things that sticks out the most that he ever said to me was, life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. And at first I was like, what does that even mean? I don't even get it. But, I think it's like a subtle nod to the victim mentality of like, this isn't all happening to you. It's not to like personally like victimize you. It's happening for you. And then you have to figure out what is the lesson. Like, yes, this is not fun. Nobody would wish to be this sick, but like, because of going through all of this, I now have the agency that I have. And I am so grateful because I've had so many incredible opportunities that have come out of it. And I wouldn't be in this career at all had it not been from that. There's so many things that would not have happened had I not gone through that. And not to say I don't think everyone needs to say like, yeah, that was meant to be. Like I was supposed to be sick for 10 years. Nobody wants to be sick for 10 years, but you have to also look at it and say like, this is going to happen and it did happen. So what can I pull from it and how can I make the mess of my life into like my message, and how can I take the pain and turn it into purpose? And you really have to like switch into the mindset of this isn't like changing, and we're not going to be able to erase this whole part of our lives, but what can you do with it? What kind of gratitude can you pull out of it? And I think a big thing I also learned was learning to really listen to my body and kind of like check in with myself and see how I'm feeling. Because I felt like I was just very disconnected in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's interesting. Like the victim loop stuff is very fascinating. And I think it's very easy to stay in that. And like you said, it's comforting to be in that
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. I've been in it and I've not been in it. So
Yeah.
I prefer to not be in it, but
Exactly.
I I know the sort of odd kind of pleasure you get from, you don't have to take responsibility when you're in the
Exactly.
victim thing. You just don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, oh, this is poor me,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
so you weren't doing anything with marketing and health prior to all this stuff. Well, you were very young when this happened, so you
Yeah.
probably weren't even
Well,
much into a
here's the
career.
crazy story. I didn't share this part, but after I graduated from grad school, so I was sick during grad school. I somehow made it, got my degree, wrote, a 280-page book, my thesis, while dealing with all of this. And so right after graduating was when I found this Lyme doctor. And he had a retreat in San Diego, and my husband was like, we're going. That's like, 6 hours. I don't know. It's a 5 hour, 6 hour drive. And I was like, you're crazy. They're doing yoga and I cannot walk. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going to be able to do that. So we ended up signing up for this retreat. And everyone there was like pretty healthy. And I was the one that was, I feel like I should have been in a hospital bed, like just like laying there listening to everyone. But he had his own brand, right? This Lyme doctor had a brand online. And I overheard him talking about needing help with writing. And that's what my degree was in, writing. And so, me being very sick, I pitch him. I was like, hey, like, was actually doing copywriting for another pretty big name at the time. And I was like, I have time and capacity to help you with your marketing. Like, let me help. And he's like, oh, yeah, like, send me some stuff when you're back home. And I was like, no, I want to do an interview here, like, while we're here. So we went back to our little hotel. I did like a 23-point site audit. I put like a whole plan together for him. And then the next day at the retreat, I had 2 interviews and I ended up getting hired by him, even though I was incredibly sick. But I was like, I can write while I'm in bed, it's fine. And so that's how I got into it. And then he ended up creating a really, really well known supplement company maybe 3 or 4 years later. So he brought me in as his head of content and I helped him build this supplement company. So I literally got into it because my Lyme doctor hired me to help him with marketing, which is so wild.
And that was the start of your whole career.
100%. Yeah.
You didn't know anything about marketing other than I can make something sound good
No,
by
I
writing.
had no training in marketing. My background is in education. So I had,
Yeah.
English and Spanish were my majors, and I have a degree in writing, which is, I mean, obviously a lot of marketing is writing, but I had absolutely no training in marketing. And, after I worked with them for, I think it was 6, 7 years, I got hired as basically like a VP of marketing at another huge supplement company. So just, I mean, I feel like sometimes you just learn things on the job, and if you're scrappy, like you'll figure it out.
Sure.
But
Oh yeah,
I had
absolutely.
no training at all in marketing.
This was pre Instagram and
Yeah.
TikTok and so the marketing was in where magazines and
Blogs, yeah, we did a lot in
yeah.
website stuff. We did the biggest thing that we actually did was online summits. So we would spend 9 months putting together, he would interview like 50 people, and then there'd be a full week where the interviews would go live, like 7 a day or something like that for 24 hours. And we grew the list each time we did that probably by like 70,000 leads, 70,000 consumers. So we did maybe 5 or 6 of those. And then, by the time he launched a supplement company, he had a pretty big list to launch off of consumers and people that were sick who had Lyme and had, seen his summit. So it was actually the perfect way to start a company. We spent years building a consumer list of people that had, whatever the illness was that he wanted to kind of resolve with the supplement.
Wow. So
Yeah.
it's really direct
Mhm.
to patients, right from the doctor to the
Yeah.
patient.
Yep.
How many people do you think have Lyme disease in the United States?
I think it's very underreported. I don't know what the number of the CDC actually says. I'm sure we could look it up, but they're only counting ones that are conventionally testing positive. So, like, they
Oh,
have a bullseye. They have so whatever the numbers are, I would multiply by like 10 to 12 because there's
okay.
so many people who have it who are going through, maybe they don't know it's Lyme and they're still kind of trying to do treatments and things like that, but yeah, the numbers are definitely skewed because of the requirements for an official CDC diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's. You think it's in the like 100,000 people, or is it?
Yeah, I would say it's more than that. Even with the
Yeah.
CDC, I would say it's probably like 600,000 that they're reporting on. But I would think it's many, many more. And I feel like it's becoming more like I hear more people now that talk about having Lyme. When I got diagnosed, it was probably 10 years ago, and nobody, literally, I felt so just like out of place because I'm like, it seems like something you just get in like a third world country and or somewhere where you're not supposed to be and you come back and you're super sick.
It's mostly from tick bites, though, right? Is that
Yeah,
where it
it's
comes from?
vector borne, so you can actually get it from other vectors as well. It doesn't have to be a tick. That's a kind of a controversial opinion, but some people do believe that it can come from other insects and vectors too.
Wasn't it named for a city in like
Connecticut.
Connecticut? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it started, I think it was in the 60s or 70s in Connecticut. There started to be a bunch of people getting the same symptoms. And Lyme, Connecticut is where this sort of started. Yeah. So it is really fascinating because before that happened, obviously it wasn't named. Perhaps it was something that existed, but what didn't have an official name. So yeah, the history of Lyme is actually really interesting. I just took a Lyme specialist certification course. I had to learn all the history and I just thought for marketing it would be useful for me to know these things, but the history of it is fascinating.
Assuming it's global because
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yep. It is.
So now that what are you're working a lot with more marketing with practitioners than you are with the public, let's say. How does that work? This is interesting to me that
Mhm.
you've taken this thing where you've taken it and now you're marketing for practitioners, but you're also educating them at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, it is interesting. So I do both. I would say my main clientele is practitioners, so I do all their marketing. So it's just like I did for this Lyme doctor. I did, his blogs, his email list, speaking opportunities, lead generation, social media, all of those things. But yeah, so I do all of that for both supplement companies and practitioners and have been for maybe the last 12 years. But one thing that I am trying to solve right now was when I was sick, I could not figure out who to work with and who could help me. It took me so many years and trying to figure out, like, not only does this practitioner work with my root causes and can they take on my case, like my specific symptoms and what my health history is, but do we align on our beliefs? Because, I was really way more into sort of like the mind, body, spirit. Like I wanted whole body healing. I didn't want just like lab tests and data. Like data wasn't as important to me. So, one thing that I actually just launched this week is I have created a patient archetype and a practitioner archetype. So I'm working on building a whole matching system. I've explained it to my friends as like it's like a dating app to match patients or people that are sick with practitioners who work with their root causes and also they align on their philosophies of healing. So there's 15 patient archetypes and there's 15 practitioner archetypes. So you take like a 3-4 minute quiz and it'll tell you which type you are. And it will also tell you which practitioners are a good match. So I'm trying to help people who are going through what I went through, where I spent so many years bouncing around to different
Yeah.
doctors and like I had no idea where to even look, who to ask, who could help. And it was very, very stressful. And I wasted a lot of time and money. Whereas if, I had this, it would give me a lot better like leads and more kind of information on where to look. So, in my main business, yes, I do work with practitioners, but I'm also trying to use my story in order to help other people who are just like, I'm not getting better, whether they just have fatigue or digestive issues or whatever's going on, trying to find them the right practitioner that's a good match.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things to find is the right
It
person.
is. Yeah, because there's so many different philosophies on healing. Like you might be someone that's like, I want none of the woo stuff. I want nothing to do with that. Or, you might be someone that's like, I love the traditional Chinese medicine approaches or kind of these like older, more historical ways of healing. So yeah, just taking that into account and trying to match people based on those philosophies. I'm hoping that it will help a lot more people to find someone that can actually help them heal because I would hate to see somebody lose 10 years of life just trying to bounce around and figure out how to get better.
Yeah, well, I've been to a number of alternative, again is that word, but
Mm.
healers, people, chiropractor, nutritionists, energy healers, all kinds of different interesting people. And after a while, you start to realize this may not be the person for me, or this is a great person for me, or this is a good person for me for this,
Mhm.
but not that.
Right.
So it's and I also don't really want to go to practitioners that much.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, who can I go to the
If you don't
least?
have
And
to, yeah.
even when I do go, I tell them, give me the least amount of supplements possible.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to be taking a bunch of
exactly. And that's
supplements.
part of it is like if you're someone that wants more lifestyle changes, it's like taking that into account. If you're someone that's like, give me a pill and I'll take whatever you say, like there's just so many factors to finding. Like, I can't believe this. I don't know of anywhere this has been done before. And I actually can't believe we don't have something like this already because there's such a big need for it across the board of, any kind of
Yeah.
symptoms or anything. So,
I did have someone on the show who's a dentist,
mhm.
and she is a holistic dentist,
Okay.
and she had gotten metal toxicity from mercury toxicity from dealing with putting
Malcolm.
fillings in other people,
Mhm.
and didn't know what was going on, similar to your thing. And doctors weren't, finally they figured it out, and she did whatever metal detox she could do and started to study dentistry in a different way.
Yeah.
And now she's, I mean, she does some conventional dentistry mixed in with it, but there's a different way to brush your teeth than with conventional toothpaste.
Mhm.
And there's ozone treatment for bacteria in the the gums, and there's all kinds of different
Yeah.
things. There's an X-ray uh, that they don't do in conventional offices. It's they do it in oral surgery
Mhm.
places. It's called a cone beam
Oh, yeah.
CT scan.
Okay.
It's a three-dimensional thing. So she took all these things and then put together how she, I don't know how she vetted them. I didn't get into the whole thing, but I said to her, because she lives, I forget where she lives, like Utah or something.
Okay.
I go, well, how do I find a dentist like you? She goes, "Oh, go to my website. There's a whole list of people I've vetted throughout the country."
Wow.
So this is a very similar
Nice.
kind of idea, but it's a very specific
Right.
field. You know, it's, I mean, it doesn't go all that as wide as what you're talking about.
Mhm.
But I went to it and I found somebody in my city.
Wow.
I haven't gone yet, but I have the name.
Yeah, I that was a part of my journey too, was I had had maybe like 7 or 8 root canals. Come to find out later that they can continue harboring bacteria and they can actually be
Yeah.
really, really bad for your health. So we when we were living in Clovis, we spent about $20,000 to get all of my root canals taken out and reversed. And I had a titanium implant we took out and we replaced with the cubic zirconia. And we were just doing everything that we could think of to try to, give my body what it needed to get better. But yeah, we saw a biological dentist. It is a little pricey, at least, I mean, it was for us, but we did a lot of different treatments with that. But they did the ozone to clean everything up, and they look for
Mm-hmm.
like jaw cavitations and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And,
It
a lot of people that have chronic disease or illness, it's because of a dental issue.
totally.
And that's something sort of regular, primary care doctors don't talk about at all.
No.
I mean, it's a separate school, even dentistry, and like like the teeth are not part of
Well,
the
it's same
body,
with
the same
eyes.
body.
It's so interesting. You have like your eye doctor and then your dentist, and then it's everything else. It is all together.
It's kind of odd, that it's broken down that
It
way.
is.
There must be a money reason for it,
Yeah.
in addition to some other reason that I can't quite figure out. But why is it not? Why
Part of
is
it. Why is it not all
Yeah,
together?
right.
Maybe we need to just make a new certification.
I think it's the time and expense to train people
Right.
in all these different things and then have them be able to connect them.
Yeah.
It's pretty vast. Now, this may be an area where AI helps. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Could be.
Um, certainly, I think it's going to help with some diagnostic things
Mhm.
if the correct information is put into whatever system gets developed.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that that's a good use of this, but I'm not sure.
Agreed. I just read there was a study that just came out that talked about how ChatGPT was diagnosing things with like a 90 to 95% accuracy versus a practitioner's like 60 to 70%. So it's AI is absolutely wild. I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's useful in some cases, but sometimes it's a little scary. But yeah, no, it's interesting to think about AI in the healthcare field and how everybody's sort of like using that to self-diagnose, and maybe that gives you a better idea of like who to look for, which I think is helpful, but
Yeah.
not to, treat yourself, obviously. Don't do that.
Well, there's still enough walls up between the patient and treatments. I think that you can only do so much, but you can do quite a bit
Mhm.
on your own.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how people can, what you're doing and how people can get a hold of you, whether it's a civilian or a
Yeah.
professional.
Yeah. So I think the easiest thing for everyone is to just go to upsellhealth.com/archetype. And it's set up for my patient or my practitioner archetype. There's a button if you're a patient, which just means if you're anyone who's looking to heal and, you have some health things that you want to work on. I would start there because figuring out your archetype and like who you are as a healer or as sort of like a patient has been really amazing for the feedback I've gotten so far. And so what I'm building off of that is I'm actually creating an app which will do the matching and will have like education, and it will have ways that you can connect both like practitioners to connect with potential patients and vice versa. And so I'm actually looking for people to beta test my app, which is going to be done in about a month. So if you take the patient or practitioner archetype quiz, I'll probably shoot a couple emails out to people and just say like, hey, does anyone want to test this out? So if you're interested and if any of that sounds good to you, I would just visit upsellhealth.com/archetype and then either take the patient or the practitioner one, depending on who you are.
You are good at what you do.
I even have it. Look at this practitioner archetype. My whole office is archetype decorated. So
Well, Well, I just the email you sent me yesterday that had all these links
Yeah.
and bio things and
Media. I do marketing. I have to be good at this.
well, yeah, I was like, damn,
Yeah.
I wish I had something to market.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's funny, like you said, I don't have any training in it, but I have had like 12 years of just learning on the job and figuring out what works. And I just think it's fascinating. There's so much psychology behind marketing too, which I think is really interesting. So I'm always looking to like get into the head of who's my consumer, who's my end user, who's my avatar, and what problem do they need to be solved. And I think that's one of the issues with marketing is a lot of people make it more about them rather than like what problem am I trying to solve. It's easier if you think of it that way.
That makes the most
Yeah,
sense.
definitely.
And by the way, I think self-taught is really the only type of taught.
Hmm. Yeah.
They're even if you're going to a classroom, you're still teaching yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So the rules,
Right.
they're okay. They're sort of, guideposts, I suppose.
Where to
But
start.
yeah. So go teach yourself something, folks.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. It was super fun. I love your questions and I think you're so hilarious. So it was great being here.
Well, I'm holding back.
You're like, this is a serious podcast. We can't be too funny.
Well, it's, I like to have a good time, but it's, it isn't a comedy podcast.
Yeah, right. Right.
But moments are good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to enjoy the thing you're doing, even if it's a serious thing. You might as well enjoy it while you're doing it.
Yeah, life's too short to not just have a bunch of joy and fun and happiness. That's like really what my goal is in life now that I'm feeling better.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better and you look vibrant and healthy, and those are all good things. I would never know that you were had been through what you've been through.
So nobody would. Nobody would.
Right?
Yeah. And like I just did legs for 2 hours at the gym and like thinking about where I am now and me not being able to walk, like it was only 5-6 years ago. So now I'm, doing these full workouts and running my business and everything. And so I think like, if anyone's listening and they're sick, just know that you can heal and you can get better. And there's always hope, there's always hope.
Thank you so much for being here today. I loved it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Allie Chandler for being on the show. You can find out more at upsellhealth.com/archetype. Thank you.